This is Autoline After Hours, unscripted, uncensored, unapproved.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a great show. We're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the auto industry. So I'm joined by my friend, Greg Migliore. Greg, welcome.
Glad to be here.
So, okay, quickly. So you're with VerticalScope now. Tell us what VerticalScope is and where people can find stuff that you do.
Oh, yeah. So we have autoguide.com, motorcycle.com. A lot of you guys probably read The Truth About Cars, ttech.com. Plenty of websites, all sorts of things. We have communities, we have forums, off-road and motorcycle.com. So basically, if you like things with wheels, we can help you out.
Okay, good. And here's a man who needs no introduction, Peter DeLorenzo, the Autoextremist.
Still cooking.
Back by popular demand. Now, okay, so everybody on Earth knows Autoextremist.com, which you've been doing for longer than you would even probably want to admit.
26 years.
26
in
years.
A couple weeks.
But
oh no, we just eclipsed 26 years about 2-3 weeks ago.
So, but what many people may not know about is that you are now a novelist as well. You recently came out with St. Michael of Birmingham. Tell us briefly about your book. I mean, I know that it's not all automotive related.
No, it's not a car book at all. Actually, there's more advertising business in it than the car business, but the main account is a car account. But that's just part of the story. And the rest of it is the lead character sort of makes a discovery on his own that changes his life and a bunch of lives around him. I've gotten good feedback on it, but people seem to have a problem with Kindle. They think that's an impediment to getting it, but it really isn't. You download the Kindle app for free, and then you. Mm-hmm. But got some good feedback, good reviews, so I'm pleased with it. But it's nothing like you'd ever expect from me. So
sort of.
Did you read it?
Of course, I read it.
Oh, okay.
So go to Amazon.com, check it out. St. Michael of Birmingham. Now, okay, so one of the elements of this novel is a 68 Camaro.
Yes. Fantasy 68, basically thinly disguised Trans Am car underneath. Not too much horsepower, just 650.
Just a little bit.
Which is usable. I mean, you don't need 1,000 horsepower. Just 650 all day long. And yeah, that was a fun part of the story.
So, okay, so I got to ask you, okay, what do you see going on with muscle cars? What do you see going on at General Motors when, A, the Camaro is gone, and B, they're expanding the capability of the Corvette and the aforementioned 1,000 horsepower, actually 1,064 horsepower for the ZR1X. So what's going on in the world of muscle cars?
I don't know. I do know one thing. I think the Dodge electric Charger's dead in the water, which they've confirmed because they're spending all their money bringing back the Hemi and the ICE engine vehicles. So I think they bet wrong on that, and I think they're trying to deal with the fallout from that. But as far as GM goes, I mean, where do you go after the Corvette? The performance of the Corvette is spectacular. I don't think they're bringing the Camaro back, but you never know. And if they do bring it back, if it's an EV, I think it'd be a mistake, because we got a good 20 years of ICE vehicles left, I figure, before the EV wave just crushes everybody to death.
We'll see. So Greg, okay, so it strikes me that if we think about a Camaro is like a Mustang, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like a Corvette. A Corvette's not like a Mustang. I mean, in your communities, do you see people being at all interested in muscle cars, or are they
Yeah.
going away from that? Or
No, I think there's always going to be a level of enthusiasm. I mean, people still get excited about these things. I think what you might see that's a little bit different is there may be more of a like a cap for some of these. Like everybody who wants one of the, whether it's a pony car, a muscle car, a sports sedan, which I happen to like, everybody goes out and gets those, and then it seems like it tapers off. And you see things like the Challenger just kind of puddles along, if you will. And that has some staying power, but I mean, I think there'll always be a market for these things. It's just going to be maybe a bit more niche in things like the Charger is a amazing test case, right now, just seeing like what people want, what people maybe don't want, and then how they're going to adjust it. Like I tend to think everybody who wants a Charger EV, I think it's a pretty cool car in many ways. They've had a little trouble with the launch, but I think everybody who wants one is going to snap one up. And then you're going to see the Hurricane 6. Yeah, it's going to dip. And then I think the 6 will, maybe if they bring back the Hemi, that'll kind of be like their bell cow for a while.
well, I mean, word is that they're going to bring back the 5.7 liter Hemi, the 6.4 liter 392 Hemi V8, and the 6.2 liter Hellcat. Now, I know that they're planning on using Hemis in trucks. I got to believe that they're going to put Hemis in cars.
It's funny, I was at the local rinse off wash, no brushes, just the rinse off behind the gas station, and I saw a guy there, and I recognized him. He has a 392 Wrangler, and he said, "Yeah, I love it, except I get 8 miles per gallon in the city." He said that's been eye-opening.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Looks good though.
Well, and GM is plowing a whole bunch of dough into making a new V8, new 6th gen small block.
Yeah, that should be interesting. That should be very interesting.
So what do you attribute that to? I mean, here was a company that not that many years ago was talking about zero emissions and zero this and zero that. And
yeah, that kind of flew under the radar because that was like peak Mary Barra talking about 0, 0, 0. And all of a sudden you read where they're spending a huge amount to develop the new generation of the V8. And I think it was a shrewd bet on the immediate future, like the next 10 years. And I'm glad it happened. And I look forward to the new engine whenever it starts appearing in their products.
And they also, when they made the announcement about spending for plants to bring them back, and it was like almost that they said sotto voce, like and EVs too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're remixing everything they're doing, and they're spending all that money on their New York plant.
So I mean, you spend a lot of time in the advertising business. I mean, when it comes to messaging, isn't this classic mixed message? And and how does the market respond to that?
Yeah, they're gonna do targeted advertising to people. They'll have EVs for people who want EVs, but the rest of the people who want ICE, they'll hammer that hard. That's the world they have to live in. They have to have a foot in each space, although a bigger, heavier foot will be in the ICE space for the immediate future.
If you look at Dodge, they kind of built their brand under Tim Kuniskis the first time he was back at Stellantis. It was like marketing through horsepower with all those Hellcats.
Right.
And I mean, I think you could see that a little bit again, and it'll be.
Well, yeah, now that he's back, he's making all these moves.
Yeah.
We forgot where we succeeded, and we're going to get back to that, at least for the foreseeable future.
But see, my question to you guys though is that okay? So you have Chrysler, which has very little in the way of product. you've got Jeep, which is not doing well, but it's still doing okay. I mean, and they have a number of vehicles under it. You've got Ram, and you've got Dodge.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well, they're reinvesting big in Ram. Jeep, over the last 6 or 7 years, they've priced Jeep out of the market. They increased the prices, they got greedy, and all of a sudden, what was that? I don't know the exact statistic of, there were like 14, 15 quarters in a row where Jeep sales were continuing to slide. And they got greedy. They overpriced. I mean, you shouldn't have to pay 70 grand for a Wrangler or 60, whatever. You should be able to get a really well-equipped Wrangler for under 40.
Yeah.
And they just missed that. And they're going to have a lot of repair work to do with the Jeep faithful because, you know, they just
I agree completely with you. I don't think they have a huge product problem. They have some gaps probably, but to me, it's more like just marketing and pricing and who are they trying to reach? Like it seems like they should want like every time I think I might need a car or an extra car or something, I look at a Wrangler and I'm like, you know, like before you even get halfway down the invoice, it's $56,000, you know, with almost anything on it. So it's,
well, they've also adapted the Porsche pricing
Yeah,
model,
yeah.
which is you pay for everything
Yep.
extra, and they need to get back to, you know, like I said, you should be able to get a really good Wrangler for 40 grand.
okay, so I mean, was it the pricing only, or was it the fact that Ford said, "Hey, we're going to bring Bronco back, and we're going to make a phenomenon out of that"? And then you had the various and sundry GMC vehicles that were then, you know, engineered to be off-road. The ATX,
Yeah.
is that what the trim is?
Canyon in Colorado and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you've got some choice.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, but you know, let's not forget that Ford took 7 years to get the Bronco out, and everyone knew they were working on it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, I think it was flat out greed. They just said, we can charge whatever we want for a Wrangler. People will keep paying it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they peaked, and now they're going to have to do some serious retrenching to get their mojo back for the Wrangler.
Well, I mean, one of the things that surprises me about you know, Stellantis US. Okay, we should talk in a moment about Stellantis globally, but I mean, Stellantis US. Okay, in the first half, General Motors sold the most vehicles. Toyota second, Ford third, Hyundai Kia fourth, Honda fifth, Stellantis sixth. Okay, like, and the Stellantis number is like less than half practically of what General Motors sold. And once upon a time, I mean, we all remember, maybe you don't, but when, you know, the big three were the big three, and they were basically, you know, jousting for position almost.
Yeah.
Well, even when, like, you know, they were under like Daimler's sort of oversight, if you will, they really had some significant volume. And if you look at their portfolio right now, what's their volume model? You've got the Ram, you've got a few Jeeps that sell in significant, you know, mass, but it's like they don't have any cars. They don't have any like EVs that are selling spectacularly well. It seems like they're not competing with Ford and Chevy to have that sort of mainstream brand. You know, when you think of Chrysler Corp, you know, what it was formerly called, it was a car. People drove Chryslers. People drove Dodges. Now it's like
They had Plymouths.
They had Plymouths. My parents had a Plymouth Voyager minivan, and it's like it feels like they're this house of niche vehicles by and large, outside of course the Ram, which is like what, the fourth or fifth best selling vehicle. But it feels like to me they need something that's more of like just a, you know, modern day kind of, you know, volume thing. And you tell me, I don't know, they don't seem to have it right now.
No. But why is that? I mean, this should come as no surprise.
Well, they kind of did a nosedive with Carlos Tavares running but he wasn't the one that kept jacking up the Wrangler prices. Those were U.S. marketing folks that were doing that. They took their eye off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But additionally, under Carlos, it's like, we're not going to do very much in this market. Well, you're seeing the results of that right now.
And I mean, and here, you know, the U.S. being the most profitable market, well, maybe that's going to change, but not to have something. So yeah, okay, so Tavares is gone. Now they have this guy Antonio Filosa who's running the whole store, and they've got Abarth, Alfa Romeo, Chrysler, Citroen, Dodge, DS Automobiles, Fiat, Jeep, Lancia, Maserati, Opel, Peugeot, Ram, and Vauxhall.
And Maserati is rumored to be on the chopping block.
So what would be the consequence of them selling Maserati? Would anybody lose
not too
sleep?
much? It wouldn't be the first thing I'd throw overboard, but
yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, it's just like a trophy little brand. But if they stop building them, would it matter much? No. But I think, I mean, the brand is legendary. Then it would be a shame to see that brand go by the wayside, in my opinion.
I agree. And I mean, I'm half Italian, so I like Italian cars. I like Alfa Romeo. I like half of the brands they own, you know. But it also seems like, you know, Peter, you mentioned they took their eye off the ball. I think they lost sight of just how important the U.S. market is and how important like it could be with what used to be Chrysler, because they're overseeing Citroen, DS, Lancia, Abarth, you know, you name it. There's just too many mouths to feed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it wouldn't hurt them to lop off like 1 to 3 or 4, then maybe try to carve out, you know, more regionalized strategies rather than try to like run this like empire of brands.
Well, they're pretty much deleted Fiat in this market. They won't in their home market because it's too much of a bread and butter vehicle over there. But over here, I mean, they've just walked away from Fiat. I mean, I've got a Alfa Romeo dealer like a block away, and I walk through, and there's a brand new 24 Fiat 500 EV sitting there. It's been sitting there for a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is the problem though with that? I mean, I've driven that 500E, and
for around town, you know,
except for the fact that it's, you know, they had to lower the price on it, and yet even for that, it's just like
it's a lot.
It's like, really, you know what I mean? It's just like this is it, and if you go back to when Sergio Marchionne, who is hailed as being some sort of seer or wizard,
capital junkie, right?
Yeah, the Confessions of Capital Junkie. That everybody's going to want to buy Fiats because it's got Italian style, and everybody in the U.S. loves Italian style. Therefore, this is going to take off, and as we well know, it never did. And so, I mean,
he also held the dealers at gunpoint and said, invest in brick and mortar, and you might be able to sell Alfa Romeos if you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that didn't work.
Well. So to the point of Alfa Romeo, I mean, what do you have? Giulia and Stelvio and
Tonale.
Tonale, yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah, they're bringing the Tonale non-hybrid version to the U.S. to lower the price and get more aggressive. But I don't know. I like Alfa Romeo too, but
it feels like to me, if you look at that, it's like a 3-vehicle lineup and 2 of them are like crossovers. Like maybe just make the Giulia, which I think is a great car. They've made it a little bit better over the years.
I think it's a great car too.
Yeah, I mean, they even sorted out the infotainment finally, which was a nightmare when they were like, we're going to have an Alfa Romeo-based infotainment system. Why would you do that? You have Uconnect. That's like one of the best of the industries. But bring back something like a 4C and call it a day, and maybe combine that with like a Maserati store. Maserati can probably get away with having like an SUV or something and a sedan, and that's pretty formidable, like sort of, block you could sell. And I just think both of those brands are not, they've kind of gotten away from what you think they would be, and it's just another, I think, example of how kind of scatterbrained they are right now.
So Peter, I mean, in this town, Chrysler was long held to be, a venerable brand. What's your sense of the brand value for Chrysler today? And if it isn't a good one, can it become one again?
I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine Chrysler surviving with a minivan alone. I mean, is there going to be a Chrysler car that's desirable? Because right now they're kind of in the twilight zone with that brand. I mean, yeah, the minivan's cool and everything, but is there anything else you guys can do? I mean, you got Ralph Gilles there, and they can design a sedan, and then the market goes, well, sedans don't sell. Well, bad sedans don't sell.
Yeah.
If they're good and they're priced well, yeah, I believe they will sell. But
I'd buy that. I think if you could get like a reborn 300 or some sort of EV, Chrysler is almost like an American Alfa Romeo, I think, in some ways, as you divide up the portfolio. It doesn't have to be everything to everybody like maybe it used to be, but keep the minivan, make something hot with 4 doors like a 300, and then maybe do an EV or something. And
but you mean hot in the context of desirable and stylish versus leave the hot cars to Dodge?
I think Chrysler could be alluring, attractive. I mean, it has been in
performance,
the past. Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Elegant performance. I mean, they could do that.
The
in their
300.
sleep. I mean, Ralph and his designers.
Well, apparently they can't do that in their sleep because you'd figure that they might have done that by now.
If Ralph and his designers are given the task, they could.
Right.
They clearly haven't, because this they just don't seem to have very much money laying around.
I mean, elegant performance, I think, is kind of the ticket, like you said, because they don't, let Dodge blow the doors off of everything. But I mean, it doesn't have to be this like swoopy European thing. Like, make an American sedan, and people would buy that.
But why? Okay, why couldn't it be a swoopy European thing that they could basically say, okay, we're going to take something from Peugeot, we're going to take something from Citroën, and we're just going to put a badge on it. I mean, I find it very interesting, watching something on Amazon Prime that's coming out of the UK, and I'll see, oh, that's a Buick. Oh, no, it's not. It's it's an Opel that's badged as a Buick. And I mean, it's just like, and we had them here.
Yeah.
And is there an opportunity for Stellantis to say, okay, this is how we'll resurrect Chrysler? Because I mean, Chrysler had the big hopes that they were going to have that EV that was going to be a magnificent vehicle. Well, I'm sorry, but EVs are not selling, and so you're gonna put all your chips on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's low on their priority list right now. I think their priority right now is, let's rebuild Ram, let's pump up the Chargers, and bring in the big horsepower back, address Jeep. But that's going to take a gut call on their part to say, look, we overpriced ourselves. We're going to have to get serious about this pricing thing. And then doing an elegant performance car from Chrysler is kind of down on the list of things they have to do. But I think it'd be good.
So, we were talking a little bit about what's going on in terms of cars that are swoopy and European and go really fast.
GM just delivered the Celestiq 001 last week.
All right, so I got to ask you, Peter, again, since you know far more about this than I ever will in my life, is Celestiq a halo vehicle that will have consequences in the showroom for dealers who need to move vehicles?
It should be, except there's going to be so few of them that no dealer will be able to hold one, because the customers having them built, when they're built, they want them. I think it makes a huge statement. And when people start seeing them, especially on the street in LA and New York, I think it will make a halo statement for the brand. It's a gutsy call,
Yeah.
I have to say. That GM doing that car is really gutsy because, you know, if the financial people had their sway, it never would have seen the light of day. I mean, I can imagine Mark Royce and his team in a conference room saying, well, it's going to be this and that. It's going to be $300,000. And they're going, what? But I applaud them. I think it's a bold stroke. I think it will have some rub off, but people really haven't seen them unless they've gone to an auto show where it was shown. They haven't seen one. And I think once they're on the road, the on the road presence of that thing is pretty spectacular. So
I think Cadillac's made quite a few gutsy calls lately, actually. With that, they showed that Soleil concept a year ago.
That thing
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
You know, I think they're trying to get to elevate the brand. You see the entry into Formula One, and they're taking big swings.
They're firing on all cylinders, and they're hell bent on doing it, and I applaud them for doing it. Will it pay off? I think it will, but you have to have some patience.
So, you know, once upon a time, there was this competition between Lincoln and Cadillac, and it seemed there for a while that Lincoln was pulling ahead, and Cadillac was, you know, doing the art and science, and, you know, just trying all these things, and you know, then it was, again, not that many years ago, where it's going to be, you know, Cadillac will be all electric, and that seems to, I mean, they're doing a lot of EVs, and they're doing, I mean, the Optique, I think, is just the first Cadillac that I've been blown away by. I mean, it's, you know, not hugely expensive, and
it's very nice.
Just, you know, the interior execution of that thing is just amazing. And,
Lyric's great too.
And, I would quibble a little bit on the lyric. But I think there are others in the class that are above that, but I think, you know, but that's again just a very, very subjective opinion. But the question, Peter, is that how long is it until, you know, the string runs out and you got to make a hard call about, okay, where do we go, in this direction or that direction?
I think at least half a dozen years.
Yeah.
I actually think Cadillac's on a higher level than Lincoln. I mean, Lincoln.
Oh yeah,
they've clearly. I mean, Lincoln executes some vehicles nicely, but they're clearly not in Cadillac's league anymore.
I think Cadillac has probably grown its portfolio, and it's a little more ambitious right now than Lincoln is. I think if you look at like a vehicle by vehicle basis, the Aviator is very solid. I think we all would probably agree that the Navigator is great, but things drop off a little bit. I think the Nautilus is okay, whereas I think Cadillac, they're going for it. You know, you've got to get the motorsports. They went very hard to the electric space when it looked like that's where things were going. You know, the Escalade, that was a pretty big redesign. I think they could have played it safer, but they still took some risks there. You can still get an ICE Escalade if that's what you want. So that's smart on their part.
So let's go into Lincoln a little bit more. I mean,
the Corsair is nothing. I mean, you know, it's there, but that's about it.
They do fabulous interiors. I gotta say that.
I mean, if you want a mid-century modern interior, I don't know who does it better than Lincoln. You know, I mean, I like them though. I really do. I think it's a solid interior. I think they've made Lincoln a reasonable vehicle for, you know, like upper middle class people. It's not just like this car for, you know, retirees. It's an elegant vehicle now, and I think they've done a good job there. But outside,
I think you're seeing the difference though with the fact that Cadillac is reaching.
Yeah.
you're seeing how Cadillac, the brand, is on an upward trajectory, and Lincoln is cool and solid,
Yeah.
but it's kind of here, and Cadillac is going in this direction. I think that it's unmistakable.
I think you can see the fingerprints almost of like somebody like Mark Royce on Cadillac, who's like, you know, I don't know, but it feels like that's more like the strength of, you know, his personality and some of the folks at GM. You know, I think Mary Barr is a strong supporter of elevating Cadillac. Whereas Lincoln, it's hard to really tell who's the, you know, the patriarch, the patron of it. It within Ford Motor Company. It's just, maybe it was Farley when he wasn't CEO. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like there's just this driving force.
There's no champion for the
Yeah,
brand.
exactly.
Yeah, Mark and his team of true believers they have their fingerprints all over Cadillac. You can tell.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion then of the other brands, Buick and GMC and Chevy?
Well, Buick keeps, you know, surprising me. I mean, they've got some nice product entries now, and people seem to like them. GMC is, you know, that's another thing. You keep saying, why is GMC? And then all they do is keep making money. And,
professional grade money machine.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. So,
it's not a problem. And Chevrolet still has some solid entries. I mean, I saw a Colorado ZR2 the other day parked in front of a Chevy dealer. That thing looks great. I mean, I'm not a truck guy, but it sure looked great.
I think Chevy's done a pretty good job of investing across their lineup. So yeah, there's still some fairly big holes in different spots, but if you look at it as a whole, there's a lot of different things there for basically anybody, which is true to what they've always tried to be, from trucks to the ZR1, you know, right down to some relatively affordable EVs. Like the Equinox EV, I think is really good. It's reasonably affordable.
And the Trax is good.
Trax is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, you know, an
interesting thing is they've brought back the heartbeat of America in subtle way in their marketing, which I find intriguing. I mean, if I were involved, I would bring that back huge. Maybe not with the same piece of music, but that positioning is something that Chevrolet owns.
So it's better than Find New Roads?
remember American Revolution? That was one too, I think, right? And
oh well,
Keep America Rolling, all sorts of them. Chevy's had a lot of slogans.
Keep America Rolling was the
that was after 9/11.
9/11,
yeah.
It was the GM corporate campaign that was hugely successful.
So this is a slight diversion from bread and butter Chevys. You were recently in a McLaren. Tell us about
Slight
that experience.
diversion, yes, from American to British. Yeah, it was had a pretty quick loan, couple days. I was able to get about 70, 80 miles on it.
Which one was it?
This is the 750S. So it's wild. That's the best way to sum it up right there, is kind of shake your head and chuckle. It made me giggle the whole time. I like how McLarens look. I think when they came back, like with a road car back in, was that 09 or 10, they were a little more technical, a little more simplistic. This is like, you know, I don't know, you guys may tell me I'm crazy, but I think this is a little bit better looking than maybe even some Ferraris, more than the 296, which is sort of its competitor. It's curvy, swoopy, a term we've dropped a couple times, and it'll rip your head off. You know,
The way they execute things is so impressive.
Yeah.
See, and so this is sort of to get back to the Celestique. I mean, okay, so when you're in that stratosphere of, I mean, so what did that thing sticker at?
Started at 330, 420 out the door.
Okay, so you got 300 grand. Do you spend it on a McLaren or do you spend it on a Cadillac?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to impress your girlfriend in the south of France, it might be a toss-up. But, you know, a performance buyer will go for the McLaren. But for that quintessential, elegant statement, the Celestiq would be. Celestiq is going to look like it belongs wherever the luxury is happening. South of France, Beverly Hills, New York, Paris. It's going to look good, and I think they'll bring out the Roadster too.
Yeah.
Which, if they bring out the Roadster, that will be, people will be clamoring for that.
Well, as you mentioned, I mean, they just finally came out with a car. It's probably like 2 more since we became aware of that one.
3 years after they.
Yeah, so it's not like we're going to be overwhelmed with these models.
And you know, they've said, you know, it's reason it's taking so long, or people are being very specific and detailed about what they want, and it's taking longer than they thought.
If I were Cadillac, what I would do is, I assume these buyers are pretty well heeled. These are like, you know, I don't know if Jeff Bezos has one on his registry or whatever, but like, I would try to get them to be TikToking, Instagramming, like telling the world that they have this thing. It's a cool, special thing. You should think this too. And that's where, if they're good, I think they limited them to like 300 or something like that. Get these like sort of, you know, rulers of the world to tell people that this Cadillac is cool. That could change the, you know, to me, that would be more powerful than any direct to consumer thing. You know, get in people's feeds, show this thing in real life, and yeah, could change Cadillac's future.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more people see it in the flesh, the better it gets for Cadillac, because it's an impressive piece.
All right, so now to swerve in a completely opposite direction. So this week we finally had Tesla have its autonomous vehicles in Austin, Texas. They finally rolled out with their version of autonomy.
With a human on board.
Human on board. Back in 2019, Elon Musk predicted Tesla would have, quote, over 1 million, close quote, self-driving cars by 2020.
Oh.
There was a thing on Wikipedia that had, I think there were 20 some entries of Elon promising autonomy and this and that, and even none of which came to pass.
And apparently this rollout wasn't all that smooth in terms of vehicles doing sort of quirky things.
Yeah.
So are we going to see 1 million self-driving Teslas in the near future, as there have been claims?
I don't think so. Yeah, probably not. I think when you look at Tesla, it seems like Musk has tried to change them from being a car company to being a robot company, a robot car company, you know, you name it, an AI company. So I think he's going to probably still invest more in this stuff, though, than in that budget car that, you know, Wall Street kind of lost its mind of over last year. So I think that's kind of the direction he wants to take it. But 1 million, absolutely not. Maybe they'll do another pilot program.
I think autonomy has very limited specific uses. Yeah. It will never become mainstream, in my view. It's just, there's too many things that can go wrong. It just, and they'll never fix that. They'll never fix the stray bicyclist wandering in front of, they just won't be able to. I just don't see millions of them roaming around the American landscape. I just don't.
I'd agree with that. I don't know if I'd say never, but I mean, broad strokes, yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's almost trying to solve a problem that people aren't asking for. Like, you can look at people across all the political spectrum. Some people like EVs, some people don't. Some people are cautious over them. And it, you know, really is like a cross section of America. But people at least, I think, get what an electric car is. When you tell people, hey, you're going to get this autonomous taxi, and it's going to take you from, you know, the University of Texas Stadium to the bar or something, people are like, well, I could just get an Uber, and that's fine. That's what I want to do, you know? So, I don't know.
So, okay, so like the aforementioned General Motors, I mean, they plowed a lot of dough into cruise automation before they gave up on that. You had Ford and Volkswagen get together on their company before they dissolved it?
Yeah.
Well, because I think it got away from their core business.
Yeah.
And it was premature. And they found out the hard way that it was premature. And, Mary Barra had to pull the plug on it, and she was a big proponent of it, but it just can only burn so many piles of money in the backyard of the Renson.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ford was even quicker to pull, like they were quicker to pull the plug, and they had Volkswagen. And remember, Amazon spent some money on that. And it's
but Amazon is got that company Zoox, and they've actually gone in production of their pods that will be moving people around and goods and services.
Well, I think Amazon has more of a more defined case. Like if you look at like their delivery trucks, you see the electric ones and you're like, this makes sense. Why wouldn't you have an electric delivery truck? And I think they're thinking of it more from the end use case versus automakers, which are thinking of it almost like from this broader technology lifestyle change. And that's not where people are. I think for a minute, maybe in the late teens, mid-teens, we all were talking about level 3 autonomy, level 4. When are we going to get there? And
well, maybe I think you're probably right. Never say never, but I don't know.
Not soon.
Not soon.
Well, this mentioning of burning piles of cash behind the Renson. The thing that I wonder about is I mean, if we look at General Motors or Ford in particular, the amount of money that they plowed into AVs and EVs. Now the EVs, again, I mean, if we hit 8% of the market this year, it'll be an accomplishment. And at this point in time anyway, 43% of that is Tesla. So you take Tesla out of that, right? You don't have a very big market there for all this money you've invested. And if, as seems to be likely, the tax credits go away, not only for individuals who are buying EVs, but for producing batteries, which explains, giant battery facilities like Blue Oval City and so on. I mean, and that goes away. At what point do these companies say, we're running out of cash?
Well, they've spent staggering amounts. I mean, staggering amounts of money on EV development. And the retail payoff has, let's say, been negligible. And it's not likely to be. I mean, I will say GM with, like you mentioned, the Equinox EV, and I mean they've executed some very, very good machines, but the EV market just isn't there for a lot of people. People still equate the cost, and even though the range is usually more than plenty for people, they just they don't know where they're going to recharge. Apartment dwellers have to figure it out. They end up in a Meyer parking lot getting charged over in Troy because there's nowhere else to go. I mean, there's just a lot of obstacles still. I mean, yeah, I know there's supercharger network, but
I think you'd have to convince someone, whether outside of Tesla, because that's what they've done extremely well, is convince EV buyers that they're the EV brand. They're like the iPhone. This is the EV for you. Whereas right now, Chevy, Ford, Volkswagen, whoever you want to name, they've got to overcome that curve of like, hey, look at us to be your EV guy. Whereas, I mean, until, obviously Elon Musk and Doge made some Tesla customers and maybe intenders have some heartburn, they were just the default option. And right now, I don't think like other companies have that like mojo to get in there and get people to think electric with them. It's not even the technology, because I think you guys have probably all driven a lot of great EVs. It's like the educational factor. And then how do you quantify that on the bottom line? You're Chevy, you're raising EV awareness. Well, that's great. That might help you, but you might be helping your competitor. So we'll see.
Peter, do you think that Tesla still has the magic in its name, or is it becoming more like a car company?
I think it's becoming more of a car company, and I think that Elon's personal brand image has damaged it almost beyond repair. And I think it'll continue to slide. I mean, the latest numbers from Europe are staggering.
Yeah.
I mean, down 60%. So he may have damaged the Tesla brand permanently. I don't, it's certainly not what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, they accomplished a lot. They did.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, took his eye off the ball, got involved in a lot of stuff, and the car floundered, and the company floundered, and then I think one of his top guys just left today. They announced his departure of one of his right-hand people who's extremely well thought of.
So to what extent do you guys think that part of their problem, though, was that, going back to a regular car company, okay, regular car companies come out with new models. Regular car companies do, major, minor refreshes.
And they never did.
They just basically said, you know what, we'll do an over-the-air update, and you get in your car the next morning. There'll be something there special for you, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think, given that their products were pretty solid, I think they could have coasted for another couple of years, but then Elon Musk got involved in all sorts of things. And I think that made a lot of people look in the mirror and say, well, is this the car I really want? And then you start to look around and you're like, oh, well, look at the interior of the Model Y versus the Equinox or something. And people sort of woke up a little bit. I think whatever magic they may have held over the market has totally evaporated.
Yeah, and not having convenience service centers, although they've added some, but having to have your Tesla flatbedded to Ohio, to Toledo,
right, to
be worked on when you're up here isn't exactly ideal.
I think it's a company in dire need of a reset. I think having somebody else besides Elon speaking for it, having some new products, it could really change things. And I think right now they're just really stuck in this kind of weird spot where, like, car folks like us are asking, where's the product? Political folks are like, what's going on with your CEO? There's the infrastructure question. And right now it's almost like we were talking about Stellantis, where we're like, they neglected the US market. Tesla has kind of neglected the US market and all markets for automaking to their detriment.
Mm-hmm. So here's another thing that sort of is covering many of these things we talked about. So these are fresh numbers from Cox Automotive, and it was looking at EV pricing, okay, and incentives. So the average, this is the most recent number they have, the average EV price is $57,734. The average Tesla price is $55,277. The average price of an ICE vehicle is $48,090. So between the average EV and ICE vehicles, like 10 grand. Is 10 grand something people are readily able to spend in order to get an EV?
I think that is going down where people, I think pricing, I've written about this for years, the price of admission to owning a car is too much. And if you add $10,000 to it for a lot of people and take the credit away, for a lot of people, it's a non-starter.
With the tax credit, which dates to, I believe, the Bush administration, back when like the Volt and the Leaf were coming out, it was meant to bridge that gap between like when's the technology to be affordable and people can actually afford it. So OEMs weren't losing all this money on every car. If you take that away, I think people could have extra couple grand. Sure. You want to drive an EV? Yeah, let's try that out. get a tax credit, away you go. But if it's 10 grand, that's tricky. Now, one thing I think about the numbers too, though, is there aren't that many like commodity EVs. So if you look at who's making EVs, it's Teslas, it's Mercedes, it's, more expensive Volkswagens. The Mach-E is not particularly cheap. So just in general, a lot of like the electric offerings tend to be more expensive because they're more premium vehicles. I think if they could get that number down, perhaps by having more commodity EVs like a Tesla, that might change some consumers' minds as well. Like a $42,000 EV, some people might get into that.
But I mean, isn't the reason? I mean, okay, so there's a couple of things. General Motors announced that they covered their variable costs on EVs, which basically means that they're not making money, but they're not losing money, right? And so you have this situation of, okay, we've got to have more higher priced vehicles. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have the Equinox, but then you have the Blazer, which is nicely done, but the price goes,
especially an SS or something.
Yeah, the SS is it gets really high, and then as we mentioned, the Lyric and the Optique and the Vistique, and all of these are not inexpensive vehicles, right? Because they're like, we got to try to make something off of these things, and you make more, better margins off of something that's more expensive. But so it seems almost impossible to, at this point anyway, to make something affordable. And then the question that also comes up is, you look at, which we haven't talked about yet, the whole issue of tariffs and things like that. Okay, for batteries, many of these minerals are coming from China.
Oh,
and
tariffs mean increased costs
and
for everybody.
So how does the average consumer accommodate their lifestyle in order to buy something that's very expensive, namely an EV?
That's why the Trax is doing so well.
But what's going to happen in terms of, that's
The
built
tariff,
in Korea?
Yeah, I know.
And we talked about Buick earlier. I mean, Buick's got 4 vehicles, one of which is built in Lansing. The rest of them are built either in China or Korea. I mean, what does that brand do?
I don't know.
I mean, you listen to some of these earning calls, and the executives will say things like, well, we do have a plan B. We never usually quite get what that plan is, but they say like, oh, we can shift some things around. And I mean, I think it's long term. I think it's going to eventually depress car sales, and you'll see things like, EVs, if the tax credit goes away and some of them are built overseas, I think maybe 8%, that'll be like a high watermark for what we see, as far as EV market share. So it's going to have a chilling effect on the market.
I think the industry, the U.S. industry, after the first 6 months of the pull ahead, people spending money, I think it's really going to get grim by
the second half,
by fall. Yeah.
So do you see an overall precipitous drop in car sales?
Yes. It might not happen like by December, but play out over the next 3 or 4 model years. It's just no getting around it, because tariffs equal higher costs, and people are already complaining about the cost of getting into cars. Cars are too expensive.
You almost look at like the onset of the great recession coming up on 20 years ago, when car sales just started to kind of slide. That of course led to some bad times for the Detroit 3, but really the industry. And I think you can see things like that where we're going from what are we at, 16.5, right now, that'll be 16, and then, well, wait a minute, it's 15.1, and that's a bad year, we'll have a couple of years like that. Next thing you know, 15 million is going to look like a good year, and that changes the calculus for how people, I think, are investing. And, it'll have a trickle-down effect. People will be keeping cars longer, used cars are going to get more expensive, and I think I saw the average used car price was $30,000 or something, which to me, that's kind of mind-bending, So
what should it be?
I don't know, 20 seems more reasonable for a used car,
Yeah, a used car with decent life left.
Yeah.
I thought I had the number of used car price, but I don't. Sorry. But so, if we go to a 15 SAR, I mean, are we going to lose companies? Are companies going to go away in our foreseeable future? I mean, Mazda's got a new CEO. I mean, Nissan's got a new CEO, and they're talking about getting rid of people, closing plants. At what point does it become unviable for a brand to exist?
I think 15 million is pretty close to some of these brands that are hanging on, specifically Nissan. I don't see how they're going to gain traction in this market. I know they're making a lot of promises about their new products, but 2 and 3 years down the road, and what do the dealers do in the meantime?
I mean, we were talking about Sergio Marchionne off the top here, and he always thought the industry was ripe for consolidation. And I mean, I think that's what you get to 15 million. That's when you start to see, like, Honda and Nissan didn't seem to want to get together, but maybe if that's the climate, things change, and how many of these like different startups from Scout to Rivian, Lucid, I mean, some of them are very well funded, but at some point, maybe there is a culling of the herd, and it also just brands, at 15 million, for example, like Stellantis is like, okay, we were messing around with Lancia. They're done. DS, they have this great history in France, but they're done. That's when I think you see harder decisions. And that's where I think it gets less fun for consumers and for us, because we've had a pretty good, like, since the turn of the century, run of enthusiast things, interesting people to talk about. Outside of that 5-year-ish recession, things have been fairly good. That's when we go back to maybe like the malaise days or something, I mean, you guys.
Malaise days, that's a great phrase.
Yeah. So that's maybe what things look like in the 2030s, which I guess the 30s weren't so good the last time around.
Do you agree, Peter?
Yes, absolutely.
But, I think that probably for the last 25 years, we've been talking about consolidation, and it never seems to happen. And although we've seen, I mean, after 2008, 2009, I mean, we saw, General Motors had to get rid of brands.
I still lament the fact that Pontiac went away.
Pontiac?
Yeah, since I worked on the brand during my ad career. I love that brand.
So why do you think Pontiac got the axe?
They just felt they couldn't sustain it with the available funds, which is why Hummer got the axe. I don't know. Pontiac had a place within GM. I think going forward, there's no scenario that they could exist again, which is too bad. They just don't have the money to launch a brand like that.
Ironically, I think the G8, the G8 GXP, like on their way out the door.
Some of the best.
Some great cars.
Yeah, but that's kind of GM's pattern.
Yeah.
Just about the time a car is fully developed, they pull the plug on it for whatever the reason.
Now, was the G8, though, based on a Holden?
Yes.
So this gets me back to Stellantis has got all these brands elsewhere. Maybe they had to bring some of that product in here.
Well, if they want Chrysler to have a shelf life beyond a couple of years, they're going to need more than a van. They're going to need something that people go, wow, have you seen that new Chrysler? They don't have that right now.
I mean, the original playbook was to take that E-Class sort of chassis, modified, and make it a 300 or a Magnum or a Charger. To me, something like that could work. Don't bring us a Peugeot and call it a Chrysler, but harvest some underpinning from somewhere else. Let Ralph's team go to work on it. Let's put something good in under the hood, whether it's a V8 or electric or something that gets people talking. It sounds a lot like the original 300C.
So in other words, a lot of the engineering spending has already been spent.
Yeah.
Then you might as well leverage that by putting putting a nice wrapper on it that
I think Dr. Z had it right the first time.
Dr. Z. All right. With that memory of Dr. Z, I'm going to wrap this show up. So, Peter DeLorenzo,
Glad to be here.
author of St. Michael of Birmingham. Find it on Amazon. Greg Migliore, VerticalScope, which Truth About Cars, Autoguide.com, Motorcycle.com.
That's us and a few more.
And a few more. So check his site out there. And for all of you, thank you for watching today. And we'll be back next week.